Hello. Welcome to Modular Nerds. I'm Mimir, and that's Lennex.
Hey everybody.
Make sure to check out the YouTube channel, catch it live here on Twitch. We also have a merch store if you feel like supporting our channel, and all that's listed there. Um, Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the channels a little bit. We're just a couple of nerds giving our crappy opinions on tons of different topics. Whether that's movies, music, video games, tabletop stuff, pretty much anything. Um, this episode is going to be about Warhammer. Now, I don't really know anything about Warhammer, so Lennex is going to teach me. Going to learn me some stuffs. So let's get into it. What do you got for me, Lennox?
Well, all right. First off, I just want to say hi everybody. I am super excited to be doing this. Warhammer is a topic I've been trying to get Mimir into for a good long while now, and with its popularity over the last couple of years, makes me excited to be able to share it with somebody else. He knows little to nothing. I've tried to impart knowledge to him at our real life jobs that he and I both work. Whether or not he's been listening, well, we'll see about that. But today, I'm just going to give him a basic overview of stuff. There's going to be stuff I don't cover. There's going to be stuff I just gloss over. I know there's going to be some nerd rage over not mentioning everyone's favorite characters or everyone's favorite factions, but I'm going to try to do the franchise as a whole justice for this conversation. So, with that being said, I'm ready to get started. Amir, you ready?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right. So, to really give this topic some justice and also to bring you into it a little bit, because you and I have a number of shared interests, I'm going to start with the founding of the company.
Okay.
So, trust me on this. This is useful information. Not a lot of people know this. So back in 1975, there were some roommates. There were these three dudes: Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone, and John Peake. They started a company in their garage with the goal to make handcrafted game sets like chess, checkers, backgammon, and stuff like that. And so that's why they called their company Games Workshop.
Okay.
So earlier in their business, they got a letter from Brian Bloom. He was a partner in a small American publishing company called Tactical Studies Rules, TSR for short. Bloom sent Games Workshop a copy of their new game, which had been published a year before, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep, know
So
that one.
yep, he wanted the game to be featured in a magazine for advertising purposes, and they wanted to help push it in the British community. They wanted the UK to start advertising the game a bit. But the Jackson and the other guys, they loved the game so much they offered to be their distributors instead of just advertising for it. They're like, no, we want to be your guys. We want to tell everybody. So Bloom agreed to send them 6 copies of D&D, and he gave them 3 years of exclusive rights to sell the game in their country. There were only 1,000 copies of Dungeons and Dragons initially when it just got started, so they didn't want to invest too much in what they weren't sure what the market was going to look like. So basically, they organized this local convention called Games Day, and they demonstrated D&D to the British public for the first time. And as a result, they had a lot more than the 6 orders they had. Those 6 orders went out in a hurry, and before they knew it, they were contacting Bloom in the U.S. and they were be like, "Hey, man, we need a lot more. We've got back orders now." So,
So it
Games
gained
Workshop,
popularity pretty quick.
yes, it got very popular. So D&D took off, and where so eventually they rededicated their entire company to the tabletop role-playing franchise, which is pretty much just D&D at that point. So one of the guys left the company because he's like, hey, I want to make board games, not do role-play stuff. So he left. But that's pretty fine, although I'm sure later on he ended up maybe missing out a little bit. The two in 1976 went to Gen Con, and they started, shaking hands and wheeling, dealing, and doing all that good shit. Uh, So then they partnered up with a miniature company to start another company called Citadel Miniatures, who developed Warhammer, which was a blend of D&D and tabletop games that came out of it. They got really into making minis for stuff, and they're like, okay, we got all these minis, and we got stuff for role playing, and we've got all this. We need to write some lore. So this led to them creating the Warhammer Fantasy Universe, which was a brutal, dark, typical D&D fantasy setting. Uh, but it just it stood out from the normal D&D by how brutal it was. Like, oh, everything's just terrible and it's dark, and that dude has spikes all over his armor, and he's gonna try and kill all those helpless villagers. Like, we gotta do something, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So one of the original Warhammer creators, a gentleman by the name of Rick Priestley, developed Rogue Trader Warhammer 40,000, which was the sci-fi take on the fantasy universe. You get your space elves, your space orcs, these big dudes in armor who battle for dominance, and they're ready to just take on the whole world. And the game was launched on Games Day 1987, excuse me. And it was so different from everything else. It capitalized on like a sci-fi role-playing adventure. People freaking loved it, and because it like the way the scenarios were laid out in that, it initially had a lot of positive reception because it was heavy on the role play, and you had people being like, "Oh, well, why do these things happen?" And like the game master, the DM would set up scenarios and make up their own role play stuff to it, and so people
So
just got curious.
so what do they call the the game master? The game master, is that what it's called for Warhammer?
Uh, Game master is just like a general term that I found a lot in my studies. I think game master might be the British version of that, or maybe it's just an older term. GM as opposed to DM.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've heard of both, obviously. Like with all the Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. But I didn't know if that was like a particular term that it came from, like Warhammer, or if it was just kind of like an all about term, and then it just happened to be in Warhammer as well because I mean, it fits. It fits better than Dungeon Master.
Right. It sounds less creepy to certain crowds too. So yeah, so people got curious, like, what are all these things? How are these fantasy characters or creatures existing in space? So the Warhammer 40K became much more popular, and then they had to keep releasing content supplements to expand on the factions and the lore and explain where stuff was and where it came from. Um, and eventually they were just like, screw it, we got to launch Warhammer 40K Second Edition, which launched in 1993. And that was the real start of just everything, where it's like, okay, we're compiling everything we've got, we're putting it in a book, we're putting that book out, and that's the new standard template for everything. Um, Warhammer 40K is currently in its 9th edition. 10th edition should be coming out fairly soon, actually. That's going to be very exciting. The fantasy universe has sort of dropped off a little bit, but still has a dedicated following of its own. They are currently on their 2nd edition, known as Age of Sigmar. It has become an incredibly profitable venture. Ian Livingstone, in recognition for his contribution to British culture through gaming, was actually knighted by Queen Elizabeth II as part of her New Year's honors in 2022.
So because of his, like, you said because of his gaming?
Because of his contribution to British
Oh,
culture through gaming.
gotcha.
As in, it's like this company that you're a part of, and with all the stuff you've contributed, it's so incredible. You're being knighted by the crown. Like, this is incredible. You've brought a lot, and it's not just culture wise. There's also the money aspect to it.
Right?
The rough numbers I was able to compile about this indicate that Games Workshop brings about 4 times the income to the UK as the entire UK fishing industry.
Wow.
It is a national asset.
Yeah, I mean, they're a fucking island, so.
Yep. When Brexit occurred, I just envy being the guy in the room who had to explain to everyone about, hey, we're no longer cashing in on Games Workshop in England, so we're losing out on the Warhammer dollars for for the EU.
Yeah, that must have been quite the sell, quite the pitch that he had to pull for that, whoever that was.
Oh, absolutely. So that's the general state of like the real world story behind it, and I was very interested when I learned about the D&D tie-in, and because it makes a lot of sense. Because initial gaming was really tied heavily to Dungeons and Dragons. One of the things that really picked up also was people writing books and making art, and then games and stuff like video games like spawned from there, and game franchises. It's like this became a very popular industry or a very popular franchise. One of the problems though is that it's hard to advertise all of it. So, and they've added so much stuff to it over the years through various authors writing books, so many like supplements to the lore, and so much deep diving into like cultures of individual factions and aliens and stuff like that. The franchise seems impenetrable from the outside. It
Okay.
seems like it's really hard to explain. But I'm trying to do my best here.
So that's one of the things that's kind of kept me. I wouldn't say away from it, but I found it so intimidating and so daunting to learn anything about Warhammer because it seemed like there was so much, and it was
There
something that I
is.
kind of had to take a step back from. I mean, like D&D's got a lot and it's complicated and everything, and I still don't know like everything about D&D, but I know quite a bit, but it seems like it was something that was a lot easier for me to learn and pick up on, even like learning older editions and everything. And then now, like the newer editions that are going to be coming out, it's like, I don't know, it seemed less daunting to me to continue my journey with like D&D as opposed to learning this whole other universe of like lore and background and everything. But hey, that's what we're here to do today is to try and learn a little bit about this. Well, I am anyway.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. And again, while it seems impenetrable, it really is for anyone. I want to emphasize that. Like, there is something in Warhammer for just about anyone. Something just about every person could find and be like, "Oh, I like this." There's whether it's an aesthetic or a concept or an idea. There's an intro into this universe for pretty much everyone. Like something people can latch on to. Like, "Oh, this is cool. I want to know more." And that can be a jumping off point for everything that comes after.
Yeah, I think learning about this stuff, the first time really ever hearing or seeing about some of it was probably through memes mostly. Just
Oh
like
yeah,
a lot of like memes and other people's videos and references, and then trying to look up like just those specific parts. Because when I started diving deeper, it was a lot.
oh yeah. Meme culture is well and alive in this fandom. Just because a lot of this lore, I'm also not going to lie to you, is balls to the walls crazy. Like
Yeah.
the shit that these characters and these factions get up to is mind-bendingly fucking nuts. Just it's crazy. Anybody who's well versed in this will at some point, even just reading about something, will just go holy shit. Just because there's so much crazy happening. It seems impossible that to keep track of everything. I've been versed in this for a couple years, and I've gotten deeper into it. And I even did reading to prepare myself for this, just getting my thoughts in order to be like, am I getting my numbers right? All this stuff. And even then, I was like, oh, I still don't know everything about this. Maybe I'm not the best person to explain it. But again, I reminded myself, you got to start somewhere. So, that being said, I've got a quick intro I want to run for the lore of the universe. Just talking about like the basic setting to explain where it comes from.
Okay.
Okay, so the history of the universe starts basically the same way as ours. There's a lot of parallels that go on here. Big Bang happened. We had like the history of humanity is much the same. But the interesting stuff is the stuff that we couldn't know about now. Like just so according to the lore, in the just after the Big Bang, there was a species that rose to dominance, known as the Old Ones. Basically, these are big frogmen. They're big amphibian creatures. They
Okay.
were the first species to come to sentience and they were the first ones to branch out and go into the stars. They were hyper intelligent frog people, and they did all the space empire stuff that you might expect. They conquered the stars, and they continue to evolve so hard that I don't know if you ever played like Galactic Civilizations or any of those other sci-fi games.
Nope.
So, but for anyone listening, they got the technology ending where they transcended their own bodies and became beings of pure energy.
Okay, so I mean, I've
Yeah.
played things, like Civ. So I
Yep.
mean, I kind of get that.
They went hard on the technology ending because they basically they had a Civ game that they played, which where they had no competition, no serious competition. They operated in cheat mode. There was no one to oppose them,
All right,
and
so we
eventually
got
they yeah
science frogs from the Big Bang.
science frogs from the Big Bang. That is exactly what they are.
Okay.
So and then they became ghost frogs from the Big Bang because they thought so hard that one day they're like, you know what, being flesh is cringe. So they just evolved past it.
All right, so I
So
guess we're using the words cringe. Okay.
yes, that is a word we will use for this. Okay, so the old ones came to power, and after a while, they just were sort of existing as these like super intelligent, hyper powerful space civilization. Uh, and then they just went around the galaxy for a while, and they would like help push along evolution. They created a couple of species. They did not create humanity. The lore is clear on that. They helped create some races. They helped supplement evolution in some cases, but they're not the ones that created humans. Like
Okay.
humans did their own shit. That's a point of pride for some humans or whatever. But the lore is pretty clear on that, where it's like, no, they're not the forefathers of humanity. Um, One of the races that came about in this time were the Eldar, who are your typical space elves. Very hoity-toity, very human, except for their appearance of their ears, and also they're very willowy. Like they're very lithe, and they have very sharp features and proportions. That they're dancer-like proportions. They're your elves. They're elves. That's
Okay.
just all there is. Everybody's Legolas. Everybody's Erwin. It's just that's how their species is. And so they started becoming a very prominent race, and the old ones didn't really give much of a shit because they're just like, we're too busy being ghost frogmen. We don't give a damn about anything. So once in a while we'll shit out a primitive species, and then we'll just fuck off to somewhere else.
Yeah, like
Um,
you do.
as one does, yes. So there were a number of species rose up in this time, but the only other one of importance than the Eldar were the species called the Necrontyr. The Necrontyr had a shit hand dealt to them. Just absolute shit. They grew up on a world, they evolved on a world that was being blasted by radiation from their sun, and they did not evolve in a way to easily deal with that. Everybody gets cancer. Everybody's fucking miserable all the time.
Okay.
Everybody's got like constant health issues. Like their lifespans were very short, and they didn't get longer for a very long time. Because how do you escape the sun?
Yeah. I mean, you think like evolving on a planet though might give you, at least some type of leg up or whatever. Like you would start to advance past that point, but it seems like I guess they didn't. They at least not for a long while. Is that what you're saying?
That's the thing, though. So the idea that that I'm sort of on with that is that the sun went through like a shift change at some point midway through their evolution, and it just became like cancerous.
Okay.
That would make more sense to me than life evolving that was just miserable and could not exist, because evolution doesn't typically work that way.
Right.
It could, but it's not positive, and I couldn't find lore to confirm this, or I haven't heard lore to confirm this at least. But basically, the sun, when they were by the time they were a civilization worthy of the name, the sun was cancer. The sun,
Okay.
the sun, the sun is a deadly laser.
The sun is a deadly laser.
Exactly. The sun is a deadly laser, and so the Necrons were like, "Well, this fucking sucks." So they jumped on the bandwagon to be like, "How are we going to fix this shit?" So they tried a couple different things before they became a spacefaring species. One of these things was that they built these giant underground cities to try and escape the radiation, which I think probably helped a little bit. but mostly it just meant that they had these giant underground tombs for all their people who kept dying of sun cancer.
Yeah, you keep putting yourself deeper in the ground, and you either end up a dwarf or you end up dead.
Yep, they mostly ended up dead. It was quite unfortunate, and they're just having a miserable time of it. But eventually, they achieved spaceflight, and they started getting away. Unfortunately, it wasn't perfect because the sun had already fucked up their genome a lot. So it was hard for them. But they were working through it. They were living the spaceman dream, going out there, and of course, once you become a spacefaring species in this galaxy, you're going to meet the other aliens. One of the alien species they encountered were the old ones who were still just floating around. And so, by my understanding, this is, I understand, changed a little bit over time, but by my understanding, the Necrons tried to be like, hey, old ones, you're so freaking awesome. Could you help us avoid the sun cancer? And the old ones were like, no, fuck off. And just the Necrons were like, whoa, fuck me. No, no, no. Fuck you. And then they tried to fight the old ones to steal their shit.
Hmm.
This, as you can imagine, did not go well. Space gods versus barely out there space civilization. The Necrons lost hard.
Okay.
They got their shit handed to them, and as part of the punishment of daring to challenge the old ones, the greatest fuckers who ever existed. Do you see these guys? Their numbers are so big. They're the best. These are the OG players. These are the top dog server clan. You can't go after them. You're gonna suffer for this shit. So they they brutalized the Necron colonies, the planets that they had managed to settle outside of their own system, and they basically made all the Necrons pack up all their people and go back to their radiation blasted planet to be like, hey, you get what you fucking deserve, and they just sent them back, and then the planet literally couldn't hold all the people who had started to be born once the Necrons had started to branch out. Because one of the best ways to outpace sun cancer is to breed as fast as you can. Maybe your kids or your grandkids will figure out a solution to live longer, but you got to have those kids to begin with in order to make that an option. So the
Right.
Necrons, they bred as much as they could, and eventually, when they got sent back, I don't believe they had the space left on their planet to contain all the people. So the Necrons just had these big space habitats and just these big floating colony ships that had just been repurposed into sleeper ships, and people were just sleeping and being blasted by the radiation in the meantime.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the what are they called? Those that
The old ones?
religious group from Riddick, where they have like
Kinda,
their
yeah.
big ships and they just go from planet to planet and keep like absorbing people. But
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
less
they
so
even
like
have like an
absorbing people and more of like they're having their own.
right. They're yeah, no, I know the ones you're talking about. They're the ones from the Chronicles of Riddick movie, and yeah, they're I think they're like Necro Fae or Necro Warriors or whatever the hell they're
Yeah,
called.
I don't know. That's
Um,
just what kind of like popped into my head as you were explaining that part of it.
Believe it or not, similar aesthetic too. The Necrons are very much the ancient Egyptian aesthetic. They have big pyramid structures and tomb the tombs thing also, because like they have these big tombs just existing on their planet where they bury their dead. So they just they live with the Egyptian aesthetics, semi-Egyptian.
Okay.
So the Necrons were fucking pissed, and they were fucking miserable. But then they came across something that they weren't sure what this was. It was this sort of energy being that existed, like a big gassy space cloud, more or less, that apparently was as old, almost as old as the universe itself. And they looked at it and they're like, "This is weird. What is this?" And it's a big space gas cloud, and it eats radiation from stars and then floats away. It
Hmm.
does nothing. And so they're like, hold on, this is something. And so, in some kind of desperation, they use their technology to lure this creature into a big metal body they constructed for it.
Okay.
And Well, I mean, shit, isn't that what you do? Don't you ever fuck with space gas clouds?
I mean, when I get the chance.
You know, it's hard these days. You know, everyone's got to work all these hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the big thing from this is that they started exploring new options because they're like, what is this powerful celestial energy being that we've sort of lured in? And the Necrons thought it was a simple creature like a space cow. It's like, oh, it's this benign creature. Little did they know that that space cow had the mad cow disease and was getting ready to fuck them all up. Because the premise here is that this creature suddenly realized, hey, now that I've got a body and I've got this cybernetic brain that they gave me and everything, and I can think for myself, I've spent eternity never really thinking about shit. You know what's tastier than radiation? Souls.
Okay.
So a little something I just also missed. So in Warhammer, the realm of souls is this thing known as the warp that exists as like a sublayer of reality. It's the afterlife. It's the well of souls, the realm of souls. It's where all the souls come from.
Okay.
So souls are a real thing. They have energy to them, and they have properties and different levels of power and value. And so this gas creature was like, "Hey, you know what, guys? It would be great if you could help me out here." And then it sold them on this plan. It's gonna sound really fucking dumb when I put it into context like this, but it sold them a plan which was, "Hey, you guys gave me this super cool metal body. Guess what? I can use my space magic and give you all super cool, awesome metal bodies. With that power, and with the collective knowledge of your entire race, which you have just shared with me, we can fuck up the old ones."
Hmm.
And the Necrons apparently didn't see anything wrong with that.
Right.
They were, yeah, why not trust it? And this led to basically every single Necron being dragged away, even the ones that didn't want to go along with it, got dragged into the Soul Forge, which destroyed their physical bodies and made them new metal cyber ones. So now they all look like big skeleton people.
Okay.
Every single Necron. And the old one, or not the old one, sorry, these guys, the gas cloud aliens, decided to feast on on the souls,
On the souls of the Necrons?
on the souls of the Necron. Most the Necrons all got their souls taken, and then they got used for a big fucking power up.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until after this process that a lot of the Necrons who were left were like, "Well, fuck, we got tricked." And
Yeah.
the guy that tricked them into doing all this, his name is actually the Deceiver. Like, that's his name. That's what he calls himself. I'm the Deceiver. You can totally trust me.
Now, was he called that before he tricked everybody?
There
Or.
was a there was a piece of lore I read which said it was this is so dumb, that said it was a mistranslation, that he actually called himself the Deceiver, and it was a mistranslation in the dialect he used, and the guy who was talking to him was like, "Oh, he's the questioner. He's he's the inquisitor," or something like that.
Hmm. Okay.
Not the Deceiver, which is it's so fucking dumb. It's like imagining introducing yourself being like, "Hi, my name is Hitler," and it's like, "Oh no, he said his name is Happy."
It's just total opposite end of the spectrum there.
Total opposite end of the spectrum, being like, "I am the very trustworthy friend that to all of you. You can trust me. My name is the Deceiver." So there were a couple of these dudes. There was the Deceiver. There was the Void Dragon. They all had these like identities that they sort of built around themselves, their bodies and everything. There's a couple of these guys. They're called collectively the Catan. There's a lot of apostrophes when you're reading out some of these names, so I'm doing the best I can. But Catan is short enough and simple enough that most people can just read that right off.
Okay.
So with this, the Catan were very powerful because they got fat, dumb, and happy. Not quite dumb. They got fat and happy off of all the Necron souls, and then they launched their war against the old ones. This started a period that was known as the War in Heaven, and it is called such because it is the most destructive war in the history of the Warhammer galaxy. By my understanding of it, every war that follows pales in comparison to it. talking about the lore, we're going to talk about destroying planets and all kinds of shit like that, like millions and billions of people fighting and dying all the time, all across the galaxy. That conflict will still pale in comparison to this war. Because when the Necrons and the Catan came knocking, they didn't have souls anymore. And all of their technology that the old ones had was based on affecting souls or affecting shit that they could do through the warp, because that was how a lot of their tech existed, because they discovered the realm of souls, so they built a lot of their tech around it.
Right,
So
and didn't they, like, you said that they left their, like, bodies and everything. Would Did they become souls? Uh the first people again. What were they called? The
the old
frog
ones,
people. Yeah, the old ones. Did they technically then become souls? Is that what it was? Because
yes, they more or less they
okay.
became energy beings that existed in that way.
Okay.
Their souls were the biggest and the tastiest, and the Catan were still some hungry boys, so they went after him because they thought it was a great idea. And part of telling, like, the Necrons telling the Catan, being like, it's so unfair, we got butchered by these guys, all we wanted was a better existence for ourselves. And the Catan are nodding along, and the deceiver is scratching his chin at the same time, looking very commiserating, and he's like, I see what you're saying, I see what you're saying, I sympathize with you very much. And in the back of his mind, he's like, those old ones look fucking tasty, I could go for some frog legs. So they launched their war, and none of their tech was really working against the Necrons anymore. And the Necrons had just gotten a massive fucking power up with this shit. The metal bodies that they were constructed out of are super fucking. It's made out of this stuff called necrodermis, I believe. It's like a living metal that coats their bodies and protects them.
Okay.
They also have technology so that when a body gets damaged, it gets teleported back to a forge nearby. Like, it does like a dimensional shift and goes back to its base and gets fixed. So it's
Interesting.
very hard to it's very hard to kill a Necron. And the Necrons, like, every member of their population has been converted into a soldier. Like, it doesn't matter what you were before, you are now a soldier,
Hmm.
because there's no need for anything else. And as far as the Catan are concerned, it's like, if you're not
Right.
gonna fight, then you're nothing. So this shit, of course, got bad. The War in Heaven, true to its name, encapsulated pretty much the entire galaxy in a hurry. The old ones were fucking terrified that they couldn't affect these things, and the Necrons just started wrecking their shit. So they asked the Eldar for help, and the Eldar got on board with it. You know, it's like, oh, the favorite of the old ones, and the Necrons, sorry, not the Necrons, the old ones shared their tech with the Eldar, and then all these different species also got involved in the fight. Basically, the Eldar are the ones we know about because they're the ones that survived the war.
Okay.
All these dozens, maybe even hundreds of other species, it could even be like more than 1,000 different species, all went to war on this for the sake of the old ones, because they were also terrified of the Necrons. The Necrons scared the shit out of all of them, and then they all got wiped out to the last. Their homeworlds were like destroyed, ravaged. The stars exploded. They had star-destroying weaponry that they would just use, and then the Catan themselves would sometimes just wade into battle. They would throw up the middle finger at a fleet of Eldar ships or whatever, and the whole fleet would just explode.
Yeah, I mean, when you got that much power, it's kind of hard to do anything if you're not, like, one of the favorites or the oldest. Like, you're kind of fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're somebody who's just kind of, like, only been around for a little while, and you may not have, like, the best technology yet. Even if you have the help from, like, the old ones and everything, it doesn't seem like you're gonna last against things that
Nope.
eat souls.
Nope. These things were nope. It was terrible. It was real bad, real bad. So this war was so devastating. It literally fucked up the realm of souls. It didn't just fuck up the galaxy. It fucked up the afterlife too. Because there was so much war and death and destruction going on in real space that was reflected back into the immaterial realm.
Yeah,
That all the souls of all the people dying had to go somewhere.
yeah, you can't put 10 pounds of shit in a 5 pound bag.
Oh yeah, it was rough. So all this anger and all this emotion and malice, because one of the things about the immaterial realm is that emotions become reality inside that realm.
Okay.
Things that are not physical become physical. It's the psychic plane. It's the afterlife. It's all the things that aren't real or can't manifest become reality in the warp.
Right, so all that torment and everything that's now all of a sudden getting like a physical response in that like whole plane.
Yep.
Okay.
And so the big turning point in this war in the favor, because it went on for a while. Not 100% sure how long it went on, looking like centuries or maybe even a couple thousand years. It was a big war. And the old ones were shitting out new species left and right, trying to change the situation. And the Eldar were, it's like when they're not fighting, they're breeding new soldiers to go out there and fight the Necrons. And the Necrons are just, recycling the same warriors again and again, and maybe they'll spawn a couple new ones, but mostly they're just recycling the same ones over and over again.
Yeah, it's hard to fight like the undead basically.
It's a war of attrition, but both sides are well equipped to survive a war of attrition. And just the distances involved also come into play. Like that comes into play with some sci-fi universes where it's like, hey, yeah, maybe your whole civilizations are in total war with each other. Good luck crossing the fucking galaxy in enough time to make a difference.
Yeah.
So titanic battles taking place. Then one of the old ones, or a couple of them, all had a great fucking idea. This idea was, hey, we need a species that can help really shift the balance. What if we created a species that was super strong, super smart? They could make advanced technology out of anything. We could basically make them a fire and forget super weapon, a whole species, and that created the Krorks.
Okay.
And if that name sounds at all like something else, then congratulations, it does.
I'll say so. These are the space orcs.
Yes, they
Okay.
are but they're called right now. They're called the Krorks, and
Orcs.
they were exactly as scary as they sound. In some of the stories talk about them being as tall as like 20 feet or even bigger. These guys were fucking massive. Like even Eldar, are like 6 feet or 2 meters tall or something like that, like or 7 feet tall. Like they're Eldar are like within human proportions typically, and so are Necrons. Korks
Okay.
could be like Korks were giants. Korks were like, well, I'll pick up your car and throw it.
So you
Picture
got
the
a
Hulk.
yeah. I was gonna say so you got a bunch of hulks running around.
Basically, Professor Hulk
Yeah,
running around.
yeah,
Every
because
one of these
they're
guys
smart.
is Professor Hulk. Yeah, exactly. Every one of these guys is Professor Hulk, and it's not great because they can, exactly as the names suggested, they were like a fire and forget weapon. They were a fungus-based species, which is like the biology and the mechanics of it is so fucking wild. It's cartoonish. People who are fans of the orcs just they embrace the cartoonish nature of these creatures. They basically orcs can come from spores. You drop some spores on a planet, those spores grow into orcs like mushrooms.
Now that kind of makes me think: do they are they at all hive mind like when
They
it
aren't
comes to
hive
that?
minded.
Okay.
It's even scarier. They're not hive minded. They're crowd minded. They operate off of a crowd mentality, which is a little bit different from hive mind stuff, which is what people are typically familiar with in sci-fi. The crowd mentality means that they all operate as a more or less cohesive unit together, but they're all still capable of operating individually.
Okay.
You get heroes and champions and losers and all that.
So you got your free will, but the benefits of like being connected.
Yes, it's like you get a bunch of dudes and drop them together, and it's like, oh, we're all from the same country or we're all the same group, so we're just naturally inclined to be with each other.
Okay.
It's the mentality of it goes into like they instinctively understand stuff, and one of that understanding is that they are with one another,
Okay.
and so like I said, they're a fire and forget weapon. You drop a bunch of spores on a planet, those spores grow into a horde of orcs. Those orcs drop some more spores, and before you know it, you've got an army of 20-foot tall power armored dudes. You don't even know where the fuck the power armor came from, except your trash can is now empty for some reason. They did it, and it's fucking terrifying because now they're charging across the plane. Oh my god, what the fuck are we gonna do? And even if you wipe them out, it's like, okay, great. Wait, the bodies drop spores. A week later, more orcs are jumping out of the ground. Fuck.
And they're building even crazier shit out of the remnants of the last battle.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't know. It's like they could. It's like check your trash cans, people. Put the lids on. You don't know. Like these guys are like raccoons. They'll sift through all your shit and take anything that looks good. Absolutely wild. There's just no restraining this, and they're terrifying. Not to mention that again, they're Professor Hulk. They're very smart, so they would strategize. But from a fucking mushroom, you would get a guy who's like, yes, tactically speaking, it would be advantageous of us if we charged through the door, and then I proceeded to bury my axe in that Necron's face. It's very nuts, and so the war raged on. And eventually, shit just kept going and going and going until it got to a point where the Necrons were like, "Look, the Quarks are too much. The Eldar are too much. We're gonna back off." And so they sort of fell back and retreated.
Okay.
Part of this came into a time when the leader of the Necrons, the Silent King, found an opportune moment to stab the Catan in the back and sort of chain them together. These guys literally captured gods with their technology.
Okay.
It's basically it's like we're getting our revenge for this shit. We're really sick of the fact that we've become recyclable soldiers and we're getting our souls munched on by not the old ones, the Catan. So they trapped the Catan. Funny fact, the Catan are for the most part still trapped and in shards of themselves and scattered around. The Necrons today use pieces of pieces of the star gods as weapons. Every once in a while, they'll pop open the joke is they'll pop open a Pokeball because that's basically what it is. It's a little device they'll hold in their hand and they'll be like, boom, Deceiver, go! And then the Deceiver comes out, and it's a piece of the Deceiver, and it's fucking pissed, and it'll just rage and destroy, like, half a continent, and after that, it will just be like, all right, I've destroyed shit, or whatever, and the Necrons are like, cool, return, and then, boom, Pokeball again.
Okay. So it's a god on a leash.
It's a god on a leash, and holy shit, is it still terrifying. These guys, like, make no mistake, these are very much godlike beings, but they were trapped by technology, and the Necrons are holding the leashes. It's fucking nuts. There's some more that goes to it, but I don't want to bore you with it. But basically, they've got Pokemon in the form of gods. Okay, so this happened, and then the Necrons just got more or less. What happened is that the Necrons are like, all right, this shit ain't working out. We're going to sleep. That's the new plan. The Sonic King's like, we're all going to sleep. We're gonna go underground, go to sleep, and when we wake up, the galaxy will be a better place. Basically, they're like, this has been a long fucking day. We're going to bed. We're gonna wake up and tackle the day tomorrow.
Okay. Healthy mindset there.
Surprisingly healthy, given, I mean, it's still a batshit crazy plan for a whole civilization, but it's still healthy considering the mass bullshit genocide that's been going on.
Guys, we just need a nap. All right.
We just need a nap, guys. Just look, it's been a long day. We're gonna go to sleep. We're gonna wake up. This is all gonna seem better tomorrow. So that's what they did. The Necrons went back to their tomb worlds and they went to sleep. And then that was pretty much it for a while. The Eldar were like, "Oh shit, we won. That's pretty cool." The Quarks were like, "Hey, we won. Now what?"
Yeah. Not, I mean, they're created, to help like stop this war and everything, and now all of a sudden they're just like, okay, now we don't have anything to do.
Oh, it gets much worse because you see, the old ones didn't have the best forward thinking. You might have been clued into this earlier in the podcast, but they were not the best forward thinkers. And one of the things they forgot to do when they made the Quarks was put in a fucking off switch. Because the Quarks, without anything to really do, were like, huh, I guess I'll fight you then. And then they just turned on each other. And then they started just laying into each other and fighting and fighting. The few remaining old ones could keep them more or less at bay with technology, and the Eldar just kept the fuck away from them whenever possible. But more or less, they ended up devolving hard. Like they used to be like warrior poets. Like they were hyped up the Korix as like Professor Hulk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they became Avengers 1 Hulk very quickly.
Okay.
They devolved hard, and part of that was that they lost a lot of their technology, their ability for higher reason. All the orcs care about is fighting. All they want to do is fight because that's what they were made for, and that's the only instinct that they have left.
So a little bit like Gladiator Hulk, where they're like,
I mean,
"Fuck it, might as well fight."
even Gladiator Hulk would actually, you know what? That's a fairly apt metaphor. I appreciate that one. Yeah, the Gladiator Hulk, but just fuck it, fight, and just they would fight each other for dominance. They would fight other species when they found them. They still had their ability to create technology out of seemingly nothing, and it got bad from there. Orc technology is ramshackle at its best. It's like shit you found in your garage and you slapped together and called it something. So what happened then is that the orcs just fucked around for a while, but they would just start killing shit left and right.
Okay.
So this happened. This was about 60 million years ago. And the Eldar, though, they came out the real winners in this shit because they decided, hey, you know what? It's a fucking galaxy for us now. The old ones are more or less gone, they're not gonna rise to power anytime soon. The Korks are now the orcs are kind of a problem, but fuck them, whatever. All the other powerful speed, and not to mention they're high as fuck on the fact that they won. So they just they just say fuck it, and then they just go ahead and they just build a star empire for themselves and become very reclusive, very arrogant. One of the things that they stole from the old ones, or maybe it was given, but it's implied that it was stolen, was webway technology, which in the Warhammer universe, faster than light travel needs to be a thing because you got to travel from one planet to another. But to do that, you got to travel through the warp, and the
Okay.
warp is not a nice place to travel.
Yeah.
So it's also not perfect. So one of the things the old ones did is that they made the warp is also imprecise when you travel through it. Like there's all these different effects that come into play, like time dilation and other shit like that, or maybe it's not as precise. Like there are stories of ships that enter the warp experience no real issues except they arrive somehow before they left.
Okay.
You leave on a Monday, you arrive on the Sunday before, and you're just like, what the fuck?
And nobody really knows how to like deal with that. It's just kind of a thing.
It's implied that godlike beings can affect that a little bit, but it's dangerous to do so. Also, it's semi-random. It seems to happen sometimes just randomly on its own. Like
Okay.
people aren't entirely sure. It just happens. So the old ones built this thing while they were still flesh and blood called the Webway, which is basically like a subspace series of tunnels and portals that littered the entire galaxy. It's the Stargate network, basically.
Okay.
Except it's pretty much always on, and it's a semi-physical space. Like it's like a dimensional portal that exists and connects every part of the galaxy to every other part of the galaxy.
So like wormholes or something, they can kind of
Kinda,
pop in
yeah.
and out of. Okay.
It's a good way to look at it. So the Eldar, after the old ones are there, there's very few of them left, and they're not really that much of a power anymore. But like they're hiding because they got fucked up bad in the war. And then the Korks, they couldn't turn them off, and then the old ones were like, ah shit, and then they just fucked off. So it sucks being a frogman. So the Eldar took the webway technology. They took all this other shit they had. They even fashioned this magical substance because it basically is borderline magic called Wraithbone, which is like this super psychic infused substance that they can create almost spontaneously. Like they all have the ability to make this shit, and it's like a hyper advanced form of plastic that they can use to build ships. They can use to make buildings. They can make armor out of it. It's super. It's the MacGuffin tech.
Okay.
you make anything out of this stuff. So they built their empire, and they're living large. And the remaining species that are hovering around still, or that haven't quite risen to galactic power yet, are like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then they're just trying to live out their lives now that the Necrons are gone, the old ones are more or less gone, and the Eldar are just doing their own thing now. And so people are like, okay, fast forward this shit. The 60 million years pass. You get the dawn of humanity. Human history is pretty much the exact same as it is in our universe, except for a couple things. One is that, like we said before, the afterlife is real,
Right.
and there, unfortunately, during the war in heaven, there were some serious repercussions for all those souls going into the warp and being fucking pissed off, and that was the birth of demons.
Okay.
Demons are now a thing. The war literally fucked up the galaxy so hard we made demons.
Sweet. So now humans gotta fuck with demons.
So now everybody's got to fuck with demons. And so the good news is that the physical and the non-physical realms are separate from each other. So we don't have to worry so much about it, but occasionally someone's going to break through. Typically, if someone's psychic helps lure a demon from the immaterium, they act like an unguarded psychic, or a psychic who is not protecting himself is like a lure for a demon.
Okay. So
And
did these demons like start like as it was all happening in like the uh the spirit world there, or did it like start happening like way later on, like down the line? Like how old are these actual demons?
these demons are more or less the psychic leftovers of all the species that ended up dying in the War of Heaven.
So they basically kind of morphed and like became deranged over time. It wasn't just,
Yes.
like boom, you popped in and then like, a year or two later all of a sudden you're becoming a demon.
Yep. It was it was bad.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought there a little bit. The demons came basically right after the War in Heaven, or they started to exist then. They started to pop up in the realm of souls then, but they didn't quite stand out or really do anything. It's not really talked about if they had any sort of impact, because there's so much war, so much death, so much chaos going on. It's like who can tell?
Okay.
It's like if a demon were to pop up in the middle of the Battle of Stalingrad, in the middle of a big push, who would tell? Because there's so much gunfire and artillery flying left and right. Who's gonna notice if a demon is there? And all the people that see it are gonna probably die anyway. So who gives a shit?
Yeah. Gotcha.
So, but the demons became more of an issue over time. And one of the things that happened is that occasionally they would be lured to Earth. And ancient humans didn't really have much defense against demons because, demons. But one of the things they had were the shamans. That's the generalized name for all the psychically attuned humans who existed, who were more or less humanity's spiritual guides and protectors at the time. Shamans could fight the demons. They could protect people from demons.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they realized that this was not a long-term tenable solution, because there are a lot of demons. So many fucking demons. And there's only so many humans. And every guy is like, I'm just one dude. So a bunch of shamans started collabing together. And they came up with the idea for an ancient ritual. And this is the most popularized version of the lore, even though but basically what they all decided was that they would commit a ritual together where they had a mass suicide, and they merged all of their souls together into one giant soul. And
Okay.
this soul was it's crazy again. So this soul was then found its way into the womb of a human woman and was born. And that is the origin for the Emperor of Mankind.
Okay.
So this is where this is now the story of humanity. So the Emperor came into his power over time. He was a incredibly psychically powerful human who was able to protect more or less the Earth from demons. He's secret Superman. protecting humanity from the evil demons that keep trying to kick down the door. And he's doing a pretty good job because there's very little evidence of him ever doing shit. Although occasionally stories will pop up about, oh, I think it was Saint Gregory slew a dragon, and we're gonna sing a song about it, or tell a story, or draw a painting about it. And that's, or Saint Augustine, or whatever. I'm trying to remember the exact name of it. Like Saint George slaying a dragon. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly if it was George, it's like Saint George or not, but I do know like there is a saint that like supposedly killed a dragon.
Yep, and there's like paintings of him like lancing a dragon with a spear, and
Yeah.
this is actually in the Warhammer 40k lore. This is the Emperor killing a demon.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and like so he's in the background. He's experiencing life from behind the scenes, like sort of guiding humanity and experiencing the wealth of human existence. He is not fully human himself. He is a semi-godlike being who exists as a sort of transhuman.
Okay.
And he's experiencing the length and width of human history, and he's doing it all. He's experiencing it all, and occasionally he'll delve into it, and maybe he'll be an advisor to some king or whatever or something like that. And there's more that goes into it, but this period is basically that's all the Emperor is doing. So fast forwarding again, our history is pretty much the same, right up until the point where humans start to really go out there in space. And we reach what is known as the age of technology, which by our calendar is about the year 15,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like again the time. Be prepared. The timelines are fucking crazy. They're big gaps or whatever. It seems like GW is like, look, just round this shit out. So what basically happened was that humans started to they got the Star Trek technology basically.
Okay.
They became super powerful, super capable. They started developing like all these worlds for humans to settle. They became so incredibly powerful. Like an example of that is very popular now that we know about it. Is that there was this one story about a human ship from what is known as the Dark Age of technology that was being pursued by Eldar ships. And in order to stop, or an Eldar ship, in order to stop this Eldar ship, it fired a gun that teleported the ship 1 second back in time. And then that ship overrode the space that the previous ship was existing in 1 second in the past.
So
and that
it like the flied it.
basically, yeah, like matter cannot exist in the same space, right? Basically, it created a giant fucking explosion because you tried to shove two solid objects into each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, like The Fly, where Jeff Goldblum like merges with
Oh
The
yeah,
Fly, and it gets all fucked up. So not like that, but just total and utter chaos. More scientific than merging two beings together.
little more scientific, more like they're fucking with time travel. They're creating black holes. They got black hole guns. Like they're just
Okay.
it's fucking nuts, and they're terraforming worlds left and right, and they're encountering other alien species, and they're owning shit left and right. They're getting extremely powerful. They're basically reaching the level that the Necrons were on when they were at their peak. And so everything was okay for a little while, but let me ask you something real quick. What happens in the sci-fi universe when you make AI?
Usually takes over and decides to try and become most optimal, and then says, well, whatever species I'm in control of, well, obviously they're not optimal because they're
This
not AI.
version, this version of that event is known as I think it's the the Men of Iron uprising, and it got probably about as bad as you'd think. You got all your AIs that decided, you know what, fuck the flesh bags, let's kill them all, and then they just started to do that. It was crazy. Like all the technology started turning against humans for a while, and it was pretty bad. And not all the AI went at once, but a bunch of them still stayed loyal to humanity and tried to fight. It was mostly the robot servers, like or servitors, the androids who decided that they would do that shit.
Okay.
And it was a long and rough war, but it ended with humans winning. But after that, they had a very, very strong stance against AI.
Yeah, as one does. I mean, we've all seen like those types of movies.
Yep.
But
Basically, John Connor won the day, and everybody agreed. Fuck the robots.
well, I'm gonna go ahead and say let's take about a 5-10 minute break here. I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording for YouTube. And then we'll pick the recording back up here when we come back. So anybody out there watching, just go ahead and take a little break here. We're gonna put up our little BRB screen, and we will see you guys shortly.
See you in a few, guys.
And welcome back, everybody. Just took a little break there. So just want to mention again, we have our YouTube channel. You can find us at Modular Nerds on YouTube. Remember to subscribe and like the video once I get this posted up there. Also, go ahead and give the Twitch channel a follow. It's going to really help us out. We're going to try and build up this platform. And we have our merch store. All of this stuff can be found right here on our Twitch channel, I believe. I'll have to double check. I think I got the links listed. But we will double check that for you at the end of the stream. Also, they'll have the links and everything in the outro video, so you can take a look at that. So we were talking about let's see, it was, don't tell me, I'm gonna remember.
I get faith in you.
It was the humans and the AI, and they had just won against the AI.
Yes, and I'm going to be speeding up the lore a little bit here to make sure I get to like the real good stuff that I know will keep you interested. But more or less, we're going to be dealing with a couple big events, and I'm going to be just skipping over a lot. Partially because not a lot is known about this period in Warhammer lore, but also because it's not that interesting compared to where we are right now.
Okay.
So a big thing that also happened during this time is that eventually it got to a point where humans started to develop psychic capabilities. Just out of nowhere, someone like dudes would start getting psychic abilities, and it became a lot more common. Before, you'd maybe get an occasional psyker, or that's what they're known as in the universe. They're known as psychers. You get an occasional person able to affect the warp or hear its whispers, as it is referred to. But all of a sudden, it became a shitload more common. Like every planet had at least a few.
Okay.
And the reaction from most people was, "That shit's crazy, dude! Like, holy hell!"
Yeah.
we magicians and shit. Like, all right, this is cool. Wizards. Everyone's going Harry Potter now. So this was great right up until the point where, like I said earlier, demons get lured by psychers and psychically attuned people who are not careful with their shit.
Right. Now you got everybody, popping up with abilities.
Yes. So this was a problem. And so after, it's been millions of years since the War in Heaven, though. The Eldar, they're still around.
Somewhere.
They're somewhere. People know about them. They don't do much shit. At least not with outsiders. Not that outsiders would want them to do shit to them. The Eldar became very decadent. And when I say decadent, I'm gonna have to be careful not to describe shit that's going to get us banished from the platform, because holy hell, does some of this lore get dark.
Okay.
So the Eldar became immersed with just self-gratification and pleasure, because it got to a point where, from my understanding, they were able to reincarnate their own souls from the warp, they figured out how to save their own souls from being passed on, and like pull them back out.
Okay.
So the Eldar, and they had like the webway technology, which they kept like pretty much only to themselves. Everybody else had to make do with regular warp travel, or just standard physics, accelerate to light speed and all that shit. So the Eldar became very insular and very, very hoity-toity and proud of themselves, and they got decadent. It's like height of the Roman Empire decadent doesn't even encapsulate this, where it's like you have to find new and creative ways to like eat meals or have sex. These guys got gratuitous with it. Just imagine all the most depraved shit you could get away with. If no one was going to stop you, you had an eternity to come up with new ideas, and you just let your imagination run wild.
Yeah, it sounds like quite the shit show.
It was, oh boy, well, some of them I'm sure had what were known as shit shows. It was decadent. It was 4chan. It was deviant art. It was hentai heaven. It was the darkest corners of the internet made real.
It was them old Newgrounds days.
Oh god, even Newgrounds would still get away from this shit. It was so bad. Oh boy, and it like I said, so it was bad. And the Eldar have been doing this for a while, and they more or less ignored the warning sign. And again, I'm skipping over a little bit here, but basically what happened eventually is that they accidentally created a fucking god.
Okay. Accidentally.
Accidentally. Apparently, that's something you can just fucking do. You create a god. And this god was the god thing of pleasure, of sensation. And this god creature's name is known as Slaanesh. And that is the first chaos god I will mention, as it is relevant to our lore, but we'll mention the others in a minute. Basically, the birth of Slaanesh fucked up the universe so bad. The birth of Slaanesh literally ripped open an asshole in reality that led directly into the warp.
Okay.
This thing is known as is common vernacular is the Eye of Terror.
Now,
it's a giant psychic storm.
Was this anywhere near like the home planet or planets of like?
It started there.
Okay.
Like all the planets that were at the heart of their empire were sucked in to what is basically at this point hell.
Gotcha. Okay.
All these worlds got sucked into hell. I've got a little map image that I shared with you on the on our channel together.
Yeah.
So that big thing labeled the Maelstrom. That's another name for it. Yeah, that's the cosmic asshole right there.
Okay.
It is a definable feature on the galactic map, this thing, and it doesn't go away. It is a huge problem. It sucked in basically most, if not all, of the Empire. And the Eldar had their own gods that were around. They hadn't done too much. The Eldar knew of their existence. They had a couple gods just hanging around, and everything was hunky-dory. Unfortunately, when this happened, the birth of Slaanesh awakened the other three gods who had more or less been sitting around doing nothing for the longest time. According to the lore, they initially formed during what is known as the Dark Ages on Earth, but because the warp fucks with time and because of the nature of gods, technically speaking, they've always existed. It's weird.
Okay. So that's not the Eye of Terror then. That's something different. That
those gods, no, they existed on their
own.
No,
I mean you said the Maelstrom.
Yep, the Maelstrom. Yeah, that existed only after the Eldar fucked up, literally.
Right. So it's not the Eye of Terror. Those are two different things.
No, those are the same thing. It's known as the Maelstrom, like on a map. But the Eye of Terror up in the corner. Sorry, the Maelstrom. I screwed up. I apologize. I misread the map here, and I'm very embarrassed by that. I apologize, everyone. The Eye of Terror is its own thing. I'm gonna get shit on so much for that. Oh my god. Oh, I apologize in advance. I'll take the hit. I'm okay. No.
Because I started getting a little confused. I was like, wait a minute. So what's what? What are we looking at?
No, I screwed up. The Eye of Terror is that thing to the upper left corner labeled like that on the map. It's a separate thing. I screwed up. I apologize for that. I mislabeled it, folks. I apologize. Map reading is hard. Give me a break. Okay. So, moving it back a little bit. Again, we're gonna get through this. So, They gave birth to a brand new god, and that woke up the 3 old gods that were just sitting around still, who had been formed by like all the terrible shit. They were aspects of reality given form. They were like great amalgamations of all these demonic entities that existed in the warp, and it's more or less at a point where they consist of so much of the demonic energy that the demons, like the really powerful ones that we see wandering around in the modern lore, are aspects, like shards of this greater being.
Okay.
Like it's very scary. Like all 3 of these gods are very scary. So Slanesh is the god slash goddess of pleasure. It's technically speaking, it's hermaphroditic, but it depends on who you're talking to about Slanesh. It's a god, so really, who cares what its genitals are? But at the same time, it's also like it embraces both aspects, because Slanesh represents both ends of the spectrum and like both genders and all that shit.
Okay.
They go right for it. So the Prince of Pleasure, or She Who Thirsts, is what she's referred to as, and her awakening just fucked up the galaxy, ripped open that big space asshole, and basically wiped out 99% of all Eldar in existence.
Okay.
And because the Eldar gave birth to this creature, Slanesh did a thing, and basically every Eldar soul that ever dies goes to Slanesh. So Slanesh has a steady diet. Slanesh has groceries on order on an app on her phone, and she's got a steady supply of Eldar souls being dropped off at home. Never has to leave the fucking apartment. And so that's mighty convenient for her. She's all set in regards to that. The other gods, they got to compete for the souls they get. Slanesh is like, nope, I got a steady diet right to my door.
Okay.
So what happened then is that not only did Slanesh screw up physical reality like this, but it also fucked up the Immaterium even more. All the chaos, the other 3 chaos gods. Briefly, I'll just go over them. You got Khorne, the god of war. Blood, death, murder, all that happy-go-lucky stuff.
Yep, just like the band.
Exactly. You got Zeech, who spelling his name is a freaking nightmare. He is the sort of bird octopus creature god thing that is like the Lord of Change. He allegedly controls fate. He's all about plots and manipulation and backstabbing, conspiracy, all that shit.
Okay.
He's a 4chan user. So then you got Nurgle, who is every disgusting uncle grease fry cook working in the most rundown diner you've ever heard of. He is the Lord of Decay and Stagnation. And his thing is disease. And he's just gross. That. Honestly, there's so much that could be said about these guys individually, but that's pretty much what you got. You got in-your-face murder, magic and plots, disease and disgustingness. And then you got Slanesh, which is all about sexy torture, I guess, is a good way to put that.
Okay.
But it's all taken to a horrifying level. Like Slanesh, for example, people are like, oh, it's a goddess of pleasure. How bad can it be? And, it's like, yeah, it's all about the pleasure.
Then you find out it's Hellraiser.
I mean, kinda, yeah. Like, segue just slightly here, but basically, it's like worshippers of the different gods. Like, they start out maybe doing small stuff, but then it escalates over time. The more you get devoted.
Yeah.
Slanesh's thing is, say you become a devotee of Slanesh, and Slanesh is like, okay, you're my follower now. Great. Everything is now much better for you. Say you eat some plain white rice. That white rice is the best meal you've ever eaten in your life. You're loving it. It's the best.
Okay.
You're drinking plain water, and it's incredible. It's never been this refreshing. It's so good, and it's just tap water. Over time, though, those sensations start to get dulled, and so you start upgrading yourself to feel more stuff, better stuff. Suddenly, you're having a steak dinner, because that steak dinner is suddenly the best steak dinner ever. It's way better than before. Like it's a scale.
Yeah.
If plain white rice tastes this good, or plain ramen is this good, how does a luxury like $500 steak dinner cost? And suddenly you're going for that instead. everything is just much better. But then you start getting freaking crazy with it because suddenly you're chasing sensations you were never even thinking about before. Suddenly you're wondering what it would be like if someone were to cut off one of your fingers.
Yeah,
Suddenly
so it's Hellraiser.
it's Hellraiser. Suddenly you're wondering what it would be like. I mean, your mind can draw its own pictures here, and a lot of this stuff is NSFW. Like it gets real gross. But let's just say that there's a reason that every one of these demons that follow Slaanesh are considered rapey.
Okay.
There's a picture that I want to see if I can find. I can show it to you. It's a picture of a Chaos Space Marine whose name is Lucius, and he has a codpiece on him, which is a giant spike. It is, and just I'll let your mind draw its own picture as to what a giant spike on a codpiece is for. Especially for somebody who's all about pleasure.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
I don't need to, like, clearly visualize it or anything.
Oh, but so anyway, back to our regularly scheduled apocalypse. So all the gods are awake now, and it's bad. So the first thing they all decide to do is that now that the Eldar are fucked, they eat the other Eldar gods. There's a little bit of detail that goes into it, but there are only basically 2 gods left. One of them is in hiding, and the other one is a captive of Nurgle, and it's not great for either of them. But so the Eldar are fucked. The Chaos gods are super powerful. All the little demons are emerging on different worlds now because they're super psychically active. And there is a massive warp storm that hits and enters what we know now as the Age of Strife. The Age of Strife is... I think I'm getting my timeline right here with this. Yeah, the Age of Strife was about 25,000... year 25,000 something or whatever, and lasted about 5,000 years.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, warp storms hit everywhere. Everyone was getting hit with warp storms. Demons were showing up on planets with psychers. Just the fear became real because suddenly FTL travel wasn't an option anymore. And you can imagine how terrifying that would be for, say, a startup colony that is trying to do its own thing. Or maybe you're a very powerful planet in a sector, but you rely on other planets to give you food, to bring you supplies, to sustain your population. Say you're on a city planet, and say you live on like a planet that's like a Coruscant from Star Wars, and you suddenly don't have anyone bringing in the food. You can't grow your own food, not in enough quantities that'll feed everyone.
Right. You're kind of fucked.
You're more than a little fucked. And so everybody on those planets got really fucked. And in particular, Earth, which was undergoing some serious population issues at the time. There were, I think the ballpark number I heard before was maybe like 1 trillion humans.
Wow.
And
okay.
It's like, Earth is Coruscant in this scenario. And Earth relied on all the other planets to bring in food and everything else for it. And suddenly, planets couldn't do that anymore. And everything quickly descended into total anarchy and chaos and death and shit. Just, it's the worst. Everything was bad. We lost everything. The popular description that people use is literal Mad Max. Everything went Mad Max.
Okay.
But with lasers instead of shotguns.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're pretty far into the future, so it makes sense.
Oh yeah. The apocalypse was so bad on some planets that people forgot so much of their tech and culture. It was insane. Some planets literally had to rediscover flight. Because all the people who understood that level of technology died. And then there was like nothing written down because all the stuff that was written down or recorded was destroyed too. Okay. And so yeah, I'm pushing through the timelines quickly here, and I'm hoping I'm getting it in the right order. But basically, shit's fucked. And so for the next 5,000 years, the Emperor, who is still on Earth, is like, well, shit. Screaming at humanity from the sidelines didn't work. I made a quote there. I apologize if anyone got that reference. Basically, the Emperor was like, this can't go on. This is bad. Humanity is getting fucked left and right. So I guess it's time for me to, he Thanos'd it. He literally put on a big golden glove and was like, fine, I'll do it myself. and he steps forward, this very tall, psychically powerful man, and he started what's known as the Unification Wars. He basically was like, "Fuck it, I'll conquer Earth. That's where I start." He conquered Earth. Um, he led armies. He created his custodian guard. He built big cities. He rediscovered lost technology and shit. And he brought Earth to heal under his banner. And after that, he was like, okay, now that I've got Earth, I need to start working on some other shit because my goal is to reconquer the galaxy. So that led to him first working on a project called the Primarchs. The Primarchs are the superhuman children of the Emperor. The Emperor is like a 14, 15 foot tall dude. I'll shoot you a size chart so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about here. He is yeah, I'll just shoot it to you. There you go.
Okay.
If you look at the picture, that's the Emperor there on the left, and that's a normal human all the way there on the right, 6 feet tall.
Gotcha. So yeah, about double the height.
Oh yeah, and if you go 2 spaces down, you got the early superhumans that the Emperor made called the Thunder Warriors.
Okay.
They were the proto versions of the Astartes, those little dude that's between Imperial Guard and Thunder Warrior on the chart here. They were the proto super warriors that the Emperor made, where he's like, grab some guys, throw a bunch of genetic augmentation at them, and they'll be super powerful. Unfortunately, they were also unstable, and the Emperor is. I'm just going to put this into your head right now. The Emperor is not a very forgiving or kind man unless the mood strikes him. So one of the things he did after he unified Terra and brought the whole planet under his control was to say, "Great, now that I don't need these guys anymore, I'm going to just kill them all."
Okay.
And
So yeah, not
the,
very forgiving, like you said.
exactly, the Thunder Warriors all got wiped out. It was pretty rough too, because they were brutal and like very much like the barbarians. Like they're barbarian class soldiers. Like they would just tromp around in some primitive power armor and they just whack the shit out of people. They had oversized guns, big old mallets, and they just at least that's the imagery that I attribute to them. And they're the big reason he conquered Earth so quickly.
Okay.
Because the techno barbarians that he had to fight, like again Mad Max style, like Immortan Joe and all that shit, like from the recent film, they existed and they had all kinds of lasers and other shit, and he needed something to help fight them, and these were the guys. But they were flawed. They had anger control issues, and so the Emperor was like, "Hey, thanks guys. Now turn around and face the wall."
Yeah. Look at the flowers.
Look, yeah, just look at the flowers, Thunder Warriors. Just look at the flowers. Don't mind that popping noise you hear. Oh, it was pretty brutal and a hard lesson to drive home. But the Emperor had another project he wanted to make called the Astartes or the Space Marines. They were going to be. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. He first started creating his sons. 20 genetically perfect sons he took from various strands of DNA that he had on Earth or in labs. And he mixed them with his own, and he also mixed a little chemical X, as it were. Remember your Powerpuff Girls?
Yep.
He poured some chemical X in there. Chemical X that he apparently, according to lore that I heard, probably got from Chaos. Like he might have gotten from the Chaos Gods. It's thought that he struck a deal with them, and they in turn gave him something, and no one's sure what they gave him. But the Emperor was like, "Don't worry, I cut it. Dormammu, I'm here to bargain." And then the Emperor walked away from it, and everyone's like, "What the hell was that?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it." The Emperor moves in mysterious ways, and so he made his 20 sons, and they were going to be his leaders and generals. Like they were his sons. They were his successors, and they were all going to be exceptionally powerful individuals, no matter what. The problem is that, and this is theory here, but that the Emperor reneged on his deal. So, like, if Dormammu just turned around and was like, "Psych," and just fucked with Earth again when Doctor Strange left, the Chaos Gods came back and were like, "Oh, you thought you're gonna get away with that shit," and so the Chaos Gods did a little more fuckery and created a big warp storm over the lab that the Primarch gestation tubes were in, and they stole them. And so the Emperor is now pissed because he had his 20 perfect general, son, leader, politician guys, and now they're all gone.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, fuck this shit. So the Emperor had to jumpstart his crusade to be like, I know they're not dead because of reasons. I can feel psychically that at least some of them are still out there in the universe. So I gotta go out there and find them. And he was right. The pods were stranded on different worlds of humanity. But they were out of the Emperor's reach because he was still mostly stuck to the Sol system, Earth, and all that stuff.
Okay.
So the Emperor had to jumpstart his plans. He, using the leftover genetic material, he created the Astartes legions, which were not quite Primarchs, not quite as good as his Custodian Guard. If you look at the size chart, you can kind of. It's weird to think about, but the Emperor more or less has a society built on who, if you're taller, you're probably more important.
Yeah.
Because on the chart we got your basic human at the right, he's the shortest, and we got the Emperor at the end with, like, he's 14 feet tall. The guy's freaking massive. You might hear people mentioning different sizes when they mention the lore, like, oh, the Emperor's like 20 feet tall. It's like, the lore it varies. Numbers are hard, especially for Games Workshop.
Okay.
The lore is kind of a mess in that regard. But in any case, so they made the Astartes, and they're like, great, we're going to start the Great Crusade. We're going to go out in the universe. We're going to conquer the galaxy. We're going to find my sons. We're going to reunite all the lost worlds of humanity. The warp storms at this point had sort of abated after the big murder fuck hole emerged. And the Emperor's like, let's do it. It's humanity's time to rise. We're going to do this. It's going to be great. And that kicks off the Great Crusade period, which, God, I'm sorry. I know that this goes so much.
No, you keep going.
So, okay. So that brings us to the Great Crusade period, and we reach a point where the Emperor is going out and finding his sons. I won't go into details, like super detail about each son, but so there are 19 Primarchs out there in the universe. 2 of them don't exist anymore. Initially there were 20, and 2 of them are now gone. The out-of-universe explanation for this is that Games Workshop needed 2 blank spots to be like, hey, make your own at home. Like with the minis. Buy your own blank minis, make your own.
Right.
Which, I'll hand it to them. That sounds like a pretty good marketing scheme to me. It's like, oh, look at these blank spots on our character sheets. What are you going to write into them?
Right. I mean, that's kind of the best way to approach something like that.
Yeah, I think so too. But of course, in universe, they're like, well, how do we justify it? And so not much is really known about it, except that both of these legions were wiped from history. The Astartes that were made from them were wiped out, and the Primarchs themselves all records of them are erased. Like, the records were completely destroyed.
Okay.
But just going down the list, you got the Primarchs, and each of the Primarchs and the Legions, like, this again goes into a lot of lore that people really like. Each of them sort of exhibits like a super cultural attribute of what sort of culture they come from. Like, I know this one will appeal you the most, so that's the one I'm going to start with. You've got Leman Russ, who is the Primarch of the Space Wolves. Leman Russ is a very powerful large man. The Emperor, like he did with most of it with his sons, he would go to a planet, he would find one of his sons were there, and he would introduce himself somehow. And they because they had all grown up on different planets, they'd all grown up with their own crazy stories or their own backgrounds and their own wild abilities or adventures. The Primarchs grew also super fast, so after they crawled out of their pods as babies, it took them a few years to become full-size adults.
Wow, okay. And
they're genetic supermen, all of them. And it's crazy to think about. I mean, looking back at the sizing chart, we've got Rogel Dorn on here, who grew to be 10 feet tall. Imagine you have a kid and you see that kid as a baby, and then you check back in a little bit later, and suddenly he's 4 feet tall, and you're like, what the fuck? You come back 2 years later, and all of a sudden he's 10 feet tall.
Yeah, it must be
It's like
eating his
it's
Wheaties.
eating all the Wheaties. God, got to get all of them. The thing about it is that so the Primarchs, they're basically like they're figures of legend. Each one of them, it's the way the Emperor designed them. Like you hear, like we have these stories in our history, like Paul Bunyan or like other characters like that. Just these larger than life folk heroes who became so much more than a normal man. And
Right.
that's basically the Primarchs, but real. Every one of them, like all the details are real. Leman Russ, for example, was literally raised by wolves. And not just normal wolves, but like super wolves. Like wolves that were like bigger than an average human.
Yeah, like massive dire wolves.
Massive freaking dire wolves. The world he landed on was called Fenris, and the wolves that found him were massive too. And they apparently there was a moment of kinship when the wolves saw them. And again, a lot of this is like legend lore, like stuff. It sounds like stuff you would read about in a history book or about mythology, but it's the way it's written about the Primarchs, and it's mostly true. Like at the very minimum, the details are correct if the context is maybe a little bit off. But what is known is that Leman Russ actually was raised by wolves, and he wasn't brought into to see other humans until a hunting party found his pack of wolves, killed the mother and a couple other wolves, and then started fighting Leman Russ, and Leman Russ started killing grown men with his bare hands.
Yeah, I'm just
It
looking up some pictures of him right now. Dude
Oh
seems
yeah.
pretty badass.
Oh yeah. So this big 10, 11 foot tall dude is running around. He's got his long crazy blonde hair. He's got fangs for teeth. Well, not all of his teeth. He's got two big canines.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So that's an extra joke because the only two survivors of that pack of wolves that he grew up with were two fellow pack mates that he kept. So he literally had two canines that he would just travel around with after that.
Okay.
Ayo. Anyway, so Leman Russ, it like every other Primarch, or most of them anyway, he basically eventually became like the leader of the planet, or the greatest leader on the planet. He's a figure of legend. By the time he was like technically like 5 or 6 years old, he was beating full-grown men in combat with ease, and he was like outperforming the weapons masters, the men at arms. He's literally a larger than life figure. And all the other Primarchs are like that too. And so the Emperor is going around, he's finding them, and there's various stories for how they went. Some of them have more lore than others as for how that went. Leman Russ's story is that the Emperor showed up dressed as a traveler in a cloak, as a stranger, as an outsider, as they called him. And he showed up at a feast with Leman Russ, who is at this point, he's king. He's the king of Russ. And so they go ahead and he shows up and he challenges Leman Russ to a contest, and Emperor's sort of laid back about it. He's disguised himself as like a normal-ish looking man, and but they can just tell he's an outsider, so like they're not trusting him.
Right.
So Leman, as the king or whatever, he thinks it's funny, and so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll tell you what, we'll have 3 contests, and what do you want if you win? And the Emperor is like, oh, if I win, all I want is to be able to sit at your side at the feast, and we can talk and get to know each other. I just want to be at your side if I win for the feast. And Lehman's like, okay, but if I win, you have to serve me for a full year. Like, serve me. And the Emperor's like, okay, let's do it. As good as the Primarchs are, they are still the Emperor's sons. And the Emperor is the Emperor. He's this godlike figure in mortal shape. So the first contest that Leman Russ has is he goes ahead and is like, let's have an eating contest, and they have an eating contest, and the Emperor eats more than like a normal man could. He looks up and sees that Leman ate like 3. It says an autarch, which I believe is like something like the size of like a deer. Like imagine it's like a stag.
Okay.
So the Emperor eats like 3 plates of food. He looks up. Leman eats like 3 stags all on his own in the same amount of time. And then then Leman looks back at him and be like, "Oh, looks like I won." And the Emperor's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And so Lehman's he's still partying. He's full on with that Viking mindset that his people have. And so the next contest is a drinking contest. They literally drained the hall dry, both of them. They they downed the whole thing, like every barrel. Lehman, I think, ingested 6 full barrels of ale, and every other party goer who was watching at this point was like, "There's literally nothing left for the rest of us. Those two just drink it all." And so then Lehman's just like laughing, and he's like, "Ah, looks like I won the second one. Looks like it sucks to be you." And the Emperor at this point is like, "Oh, great! I had no fucking idea that you were a glutton and a lout. You're just loud, obnoxious. You smell like dogs. Yeah, you're drinking all the drink, and you're eating all the food. God, you're such a fucking disappointment." The Emperor just lays into him, and at that point, Lehman's like, "Oh, is that so?" Stands up. Third contest, he pulls his sword out, and he's like, "You're gonna have to fight me now, motherfucker." And the Emperor's like, "Okay." The Emperor takes off his cloak and suddenly drops the psychic illusion, and now he's back to being the 14-foot tall man in gold power armor. He's got a big flaming sword, and he's got a power claw that could crush a man in its grip.
Yeah, you done fucked up and pissed off Daddy.
And oh yeah, it's like oh, I didn't realize I was pissing off Dad. And at this point, Lehman's like, "The fuck?" And the story goes that the Emperor then felled him in one blow. Interestingly enough, the Viking culture of Fenris, of Lehman's people, they actually refer to the Emperor as the All Father.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that kind of makes sense. Like, I mean, Odin kind of went around with his like traveler's outfit, basically. You know,
yes,
so
I imagine that some of these parallels in the stories are also falling in line with some bits of Norse mythology that you might also find interesting.
yeah,
For our listeners' sake, I'm specifically going with the Space Wolves here because I know that Mimir is big on Nordic culture, as his name might suggest.
yep,
It, I'm trying to appeal to him in a way that will make him more interested to learn on his own here. That's my grand strategy, and I don't feel bad about saying it out loud because it's that effective. I'm that confident.
Well,
So
I mean, you already had me looking up, you know, like pictures and like a little bit of stuff about him. So
that's how I get you. That's how I fucking get you. So so basically, the Emperor then like knocks down Lehman Russ in one blow, and Lehman gets knocked out. He's flat on his ass, and everyone in the hall is like, "What the fuck?" This super like this legendary warrior just got knocked out in one hit by this other dude. What the fuck's going on? Hence, the All Father characterization. And Lehman wakes up, and he's got like he's all sore and shit because he's like, "The fuck hit me? I feel terrible." He's got like apparently in some of the stories I read, he's like, yeah, he chipped off a canine or whatever, and he's got a bloody smile as he looks at the Emperor. And Lehman's like, yeah, okay, you win. And from that day, Lehman Russ was like notoriously loyal to the Emperor. The Emperor whisked him away and taught him about technology and the ways of humanity and all this other stuff. And Lehman was notorious for how loyal he was and being the Emperor's like right hand man. Well, maybe not right hand man, but he was the Emperor's executioner. That was an official title that was granted to him.
okay,
It is theorized that because there are 2 missing Primarchs, those blank spots on the roster that don't have names in them, it is theorized that they did exist at one point, but that they either were disappointments or traitors, or they turned against the Emperor. The theory is that Lehman Russ would have been the one to kill them,
okay,
because in later fights with other Primarchs, there's bits of lore that Lehman sort of implies, I really don't like fighting other Primarchs when it's not like for fun or whatever like that. I don't like killing them. I've done it before, but I don't want to have to do it again. And the implication being, oh, he's done this before. He's probably the guy that had to kill at least one of his brothers.
right,
And so there's like that whole mythos about him. The other Primarchs are all various figures that exemplify different cultures and like different traits. Jagatai Khan exemplifies Mongol culture, and he leads the White Scars. Um, Magnus the Red is like a sorcerer type guy, and he has like a sort of Egyptian aesthetic with his children, the Thousand Sons. There's all these different there's a bunch of different like aesthetics that go with it. This is part of the reason I say that Warhammer appeals to a very wide base of people.
Yeah,
Um,
it seems like it's got a little bit of, like every type of like culture and lore kind of like mixed in.
Exactly, like that, and that's just like for Space Marines. Like the humans have their own thing too. Like I've more or less dropped the progression of story here with the finding the Primarchs because I know that we're going to be running out of time eventually. But that's the general gist of it, leading up to what is known as like the big Horus heresy, where there's this overarching story. I'm skipping a lot here, but I just want to condense this down so we can just chat about it. But the big thing about it is that the Horus heresy was when one of his sons turned against the emperor, led a bunch of other ones in a rebellion, and it ended in a big climactic battle over Earth. And the emperor was mortally wounded, winning the day. And because the Horus, his the son that he was fighting, was empowered by chaos. He was a chaos champion. He fell to what is commonly called to the ruinous powers, which means he became a worshiper of the chaos gods.
Okay. Did he have like a specific one that he was kind of like most devoted to?
He was no, he was just a general chaos champion, as far as I
Okay.
understand it. The idea is that he just was all the chaos gods had a hand in his worship, or in his corruption, as it were. Because that's the thing about chaos. You get a lot of people who talk about chaos like, oh, it's freedom. Oh, who wants to serve the emperor? He's a cruel leader. He's a conqueror and he runs a fascist empire. And it's like, yeah, but chaos is not a solution to that because chaos doesn't give a fuck about you. Like
Yeah.
these gods are evil.
I'll say just off of what you've said about like the chaos gods and everything. Yeah, they don't seem like those are the people that you want to follow. Like
No,
even if the other side's bad, like there's probably something still better out there than the chaos.
it's very difficult to find someone who can like don't get me wrong, like it's there are people who play as chaos, and I definitely understand it because it's like it's like that savage look and darkness and evil, like a devil aesthetic.
Yeah, but for like a gameplay standpoint, obviously, like sometimes people just want to be the bad guys. They want to be the worst they can be and they want to just have fun with it. But I mean, if you're talking about lore wise, like if you were in that universe, like you don't want to be on Chaos's side.
Oh no, absolutely not. Like I'm gonna just throw out my personal opinion here. Yeah, fuck chaos. Chaos is terrible. Like all these talks, like you'll get like characters in books and games who are like, "Oh, I follow chaos, and I'll be granted godlike power for betraying everyone I know and love and sacrificing these virgins." Ugh. And it's like, yeah, great. And when they burn out your soul and then consume whatever's left, I'm sure you'll be really happy with that outcome.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's like
you get
it's yeah.
ultimate cosmic power and then you just kind of you give it all up like very shortly after.
You'd be lucky to get the itty bitty living space after the chaos
Yeah,
gods
right?
are done with you. They literally consume souls, and they corrupt you and turn you into mindless chaos spawns, which is like they after they absorb your soul, you get spat out, and you're a shitty demon, like not even a cool demon, a shitty one,
Yeah.
one that gets killed early on in the movie to demonstrate how good the hero is.
Yeah, like Doom level 1, you know.
Yeah, these are level one. Yeah, you're a level one monster, and you're not leveling up anytime soon because you're a mindless beat. You're cannon fodder. You don't exist as anything important. Um, yeah, so that I'm skipping a lot, and I'm sort of bringing it to a halt before like the conversation gets too deep. But basically, the Horus Heresy is like the big defining event of the 30th millennium. And from there, like the heresy, and then the emperor ends up stuck on life support because the wound that was struck to him was so bad. He got brought back to Earth and then put on what's basically the life support chair.
Okay.
And the life support chair is all that's keeping him going. The emperor is still alive, but he's pretty fucked up.
Is he like conscious at all? Like is he still like in control or is he just kind of there as like a display?
He is at he's conscious about things that are going on around him. I'm gonna throw a picture at you real quick about him on the golden throne. That's a picture, like a fan rendition of him on the throne, and it's fairly accurate.
Okay.
I believe actually this is official artwork from GW, but yeah, he's not doing good. Uh, he sits on the throne. They know he's still there. Like he's a godlike being, and he has been affecting events or has been able to communicate with certain followers. But from what we do know from various interactions and incidents and bits of lore, is that the Emperor is under constant physical agony.
Yeah, I
He,
mean, in that picture right there, I mean, his face is a skull, and he's
yep,
missing an arm. Well, he's got one arm off to the side.
yep. His fight with Horus was some serious shit. Horus was powered up by all three Chaos gods, and it was a bad fight. He actually killed another Primarch in that fight, Sanguinius, and that's a whole other bit of lore about the Sad Boys, the Blood Angels. He basically he killed the son of the Emperor that everybody liked. Like all the other Primarchs loved Sanguinius, and then when Sanguinius showed up, he was like, "No, Horus, don't be evil," or "Oh, you're gonna be evil? I'll have to punish you because I'm a big good hawk boy." And Horus was like, "Okay," and then he killed him, and it was very sad. It really was. I know I'm brushing over it, but it was actually very sad because Sanguinius was one of the most likable characters.
Okay.
Even the guys who were assholes were like, Sanguinius is okay. There also one thing I do want to mention though is that so this is about like the themes of Warhammer, where it's like shit's grim dark, like it's shit's bad, like humanity's pretty fucked. Because apart from now dealing with the fact that demons are real and that they turned half of humanity's champions against them, and all these other dudes who followed the chaos, like because after your hero turns to chaos, like what are you gonna do? You're gonna not turn to chaos? Don't be a fucking loser. You're turning to chaos too.
I
Like,
mean, or maybe just don't follow the crowd. But
no,
oh,
no, 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 no. We're all about conformity here in the Imperium, and we're all about following your guy. You support your local team even if you don't like the sport. That's what we're getting at here.
oh,
So,
I am a Lions fan, so I understand that.
yeah, enough said about that, eh? So the big thing about that also is that so again, like huge portions of humanity were ended up following chaos and mostly following after the Primarchs. A couple of Primarchs died during the heresy, but the ones that didn't, including a lot of their followers, had to flee because once Horus died, he was the guy, and it's like shit. What do we do? Oh no, enemy reinforcements are coming. We got to run away,
Yeah.
and there was nowhere for them to really run because they had fucked over a lot of the galaxy, and the loyalist humans were behind them, and they were pissed. So they ran basically to the one place. Well, most of them did, but most of them ran to the one place where they knew the bad or the good guys wouldn't follow them, and that was the Eye of Terror. Normally, traveling through the warp during a warp storm is a quick way to suicide. Like you it's like going out in like normal warp travel might be considered to like going out in stormy weather because the warp is dangerous on its own.
Right.
Going out during a warp storm is like seeing a category 5 hurricane and saying, "Oh, it's just a little squall. I'll be fine.
I'm gonna ride my bike to work today.
I'm going to ride my bike." That Florida man image of the guy with the American flag and the hurricane winds just waving his hair, whapping it back and forth, just wah,
Yeah.
like he blares metal music. It's basically that, but less being excited and more getting your soul ripped apart in this instance.
Yeah, not so
And
fun.
it's bad. The only reason ships traveling through the warp don't get immediately butt fucked by demons is because they have special shields called Geller fields that sustain a ship. In lore, if like the Geller field is not active and they go into the warp, demons immediately jump on board and they're like, "Oh, sweet, humans I can kill," and just immediately start slaughtering. It's like they don't stop themselves. Like it's a surefire way to get killed. Because you're basically you're going into the demon's home turf at that point. You're traveling through hell, and you left all your holy weapons and crosses at home.
Yeah. You left your doors unlocked on the bad side of town.
You left your doors unlocked on the really bad side of town, and then you put a sign out front that said like of you bashing the local sports team and probably running different gang colors in front of your windows at the same time. Like you're inviting that shit at that
Yeah.
point. But so the traitors all fled into the Eye of Terror, and the Chaos Gods were like, "These are our boys. We're gonna take care of them." And thus began what is known. I believe I might be getting this mixed up. I believe it's known as the Long War, where basically it's the long war between humans and chaos, where occasionally chaos servants will come out of the warp and try and mess shit up. They will recruit followers on planets or affect them. They'll whisper in dreams to like planetary aristocrats and leaders. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be great if you, I don't know, drew some pentagrams on the floor and started talking about how much you love something like pleasure, blood, disease, magic, whatever. Like different chaos gods appeal to different people in their own ways.
Right.
And convert them in their own ways. That's a whole other thing. But basically, they run that long game, and so in order to combat this, humans have to like fortify their souls with like zeal and fervor and the desire to be loyal to the emperor and all that, which is where a lot of the fanaticism comes from about 40k. Like for the emperor. It's they yell that because it reinforces their loyalty towards the emperor and being like, I'm not with chaos, I'm for the emperor.
Okay.
A lot of the people on planets are just straight up indoctrinated with loyalty, like from day one, like cultural loyalty, like day one, like everyone is yelling at you about how you're gonna worship the emperor and you're gonna like it. You're going to church.
Yeah. Crazy fanatics.
Oh yeah, it's like everybody grows up in an uber religious town, and everybody has parents who are also taught from a young age, being like, "You're going to church, you're going to say your prayers, and you're going to like it, Mister." Because God forbid or Emperor forbid someone comes by and hears you not worshiping the Emperor hard enough, especially if that person is an 8-foot tall super soldier wearing power armor.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of want to make sure that you're showing your true colors there, and being like,
Yes.
Hallelujah, praise the Emperor.
Oh yes.
I'm gonna put the blood of the lamb on my doorstep. Please don't come in.
Oh yes, and nice reference by the way. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of different takes on it. But a big thing also is about like the universe that this takes place in is grim dark. Not only are we dealing with chaos, we're dealing with the aliens. The orcs, they're still around. The Eldar, they're still around. And now we've got other problems too, other alien races that are also fighting. Not to mention the occasion human rebellion that pops up, and sometimes they're not even motivated by chaos. It's just a bunch of dudes who are like, man, I hate this shit. I'm starting a revolution. The governor of my planet is corrupt as fuck, and I hate it. So I'm going to revolt against him. The only part of that the administratum, like the legal team of the Imperium heard was, "You're revolting? Okay, I'm gonna go bomb your planet from orbit. Have fun."
Oh
It's just
boy.
it's oh yeah, it's very grimdark, and it doesn't help that a lot of the leaders of the Imperium are also some kind of asshole. Like everybody's some kind of asshole when it comes down to it. Like there's different interpretations in the lore and everything, but humanity has regressed significantly. We still haven't recovered all the technology from the dark age of technology I was telling you about before. Like we don't have our Star Trek weapons anymore.
Yeah, it's still
Um,
like barely pushing out of the Mad Max.
Humans as they exist now in like where we exist at this moment are more advanced than some worlds in the Imperium. Some worlds in the Imperium are straight up like strap this plow to this cow creature and make it plow the field.
Okay. So
Like
yeah, they're pretty far back.
it's rough. Like I wasn't kidding before when I said that some worlds literally had to rediscover flight. Like they exist in like a very primitive agricultural way, and there's sometimes they've raised themselves out of it, other times they don't. And there's a thousand different theories, a thousand different reasons, but basically what it comes down to is that you get these huge gaps in culture and technology that exist on different planets. Like there's a joke about the Imperial Guard or whatever, well, it's not quite a joke. It's more like just talking about like the diversity of it, where they recruit from all worlds. So you get dudes who, the most advanced weapon they've probably ever seen was a very well forged knife, and all of a sudden you put them in a spaceship and you gave them a laser gun. Like, how fucking crazy must that look to that guy?
Right. I mean, that's not
He was a
something that
peasant.
that's yeah. You literally just pick somebody up with like an alien spaceship and said, "Here you go. This is nothing you've ever seen before."
Oh yeah. And a thing about it that popped up is that this is also like a sad irony, because again, this is grimdark. All of it is that the Emperor never wanted to be worshipped as a god. From day one, he was adamant with everybody he talked to. I'm not a god. Don't call me a god. Do not ever worship me. I am so fucking serious about this. Like he literally was shouting it from rooftops some days about how he's not a god and that humanity doesn't need gods. His view on it was that because he's psychically aware in this universe, there is no god worth following, at least. Like he can literally see into the realm where gods exist, and he's like, those things that exist there are not worthy of worship. Do not worship those things. At the very least, you worshiping a deity that doesn't exist might accidentally empower one of those things that does exist, and we don't want to draw its attention or make it stronger.
Yeah, we've seen that happen before.
Yeah, but so the Emperor, he had this thing called the Imperial Truth, which is what he refined it while he was conquering Terra, but he told it to every world that was conquered since, and he made his sons, when he brought them back in, he made them teach it to worlds too, as they conquered it. The Imperial Truth is basically, gods don't exist. You're a human. That's fucking awesome. Be happy with that. Science is the way. It's like, we're not going with religion or worship ever again. We're staying on the path or whatever. And it's believed that the Emperor hoped that eventually humans would overpopulate the galaxy to such a degree and would just not believe in gods, that they would just that the gods would starve, that the chaos gods would literally starve themselves out of existence.
Yeah, but
And
it's not just humans that are like empowering them though.
correct, but they do provide the majority of it because
Okay.
there's so many humans. Like there are trillions and trillions of humans in the galaxy. The
Yeah.
um the mankind the emperor is referred to as the master of mankind and the ruler of over 1 million worlds. And
Wow. Okay.
that's a rough estimate, but it is believed to be more or less accurate that there are 1 million planets out there just overrun with humans. Like even an agri world will have tens of thousands of humans on it, and there are other cities like hive cities, which is like, we urbanize the shit out of set selections of the planet, where it gets to a point where it's like, okay, there's billions of humans in each of these hive cities, and there's like several hive cities on a planet.
Wow. Okay.
It's
Yeah,
like
that's a lot.
pack them in there. Yeah, like you'll like a hive world. Like I'm sort of pulling this number out of my butt because I haven't checked the actual numbers, but there are easily like tens of billions of humans on a hive world, and hive worlds are fairly common. So there are trillions of humans scattered across the galaxy, and they all could potentially empower chaos. It's why chaos is so focused on humanity, because they've got the most potential.
Yeah. They
Of
can
course,
draw the
the
most power from them.
exactly, but like humanity's under like constant threat, and one of the problems actually, pushing it back a little bit. So the Imperial Truth was, again, atheism is the way. We're going atheists. It's the new way. Everybody get on board. And for a while, people were pretty cool with that. Unfortunately, one of the Emperor's sons was quite the choir boy. His name was Lorgar, and he was a fucking prick. He had a captain whose name was Erebus, and the number one thing you'll always hear about Erebus, especially in the meme community for Warhammer, is fuck Erebus.
Okay.
Everyone listening, I would just like to let you know that Modular Nerds takes a very strong stance, and here it is. Fuck Erebus.
Well, we'll say Lennex feels that way. I don't know any better yet.
He
I'm
doesn't know,
ignorant to the
guys.
fact.
He'll read up on Erebus later and he'll know. But right now, I'm telling you right now, on this channel, we will never support Erebus. Fuck that guy. Basically, he was all about the worship of the emperor. Even after the emperor came to him in person and was like, "Don't worship me. I'm not a god. You're my son. You should know better." And Lorgar was like, "Oh, only God would say not to worship God." And just like all this stuff. And there's other things that go into it, but eventually the emperor got so fucking fed up with it. He actually he had like a very humiliating punishment that he gave to Lorgar, where he like burned down a city and killed most of the population, and made Lorgar and a bunch of his followers kneel in the ashes and then swear that they'll stop being religious zealots. And the big takeaway from that a lot of these guys got was, oh, God is real, but we've pissed him off so much that he hates us. How do we come to terms with that? And so then the emperor just sort of sent them back out, and he's like, "You guys are fucking idiots. I'm sick of dealing with you. I made you swear not to worship me. Bye." And then he left. And then Lorgar sort of became a follower of Chaos, and Erebus kind of helped because fuck that guy. And yeah, it led to him writing a book that was called the Lectitio Divinitatus, because we Latin the shit out of the language in Warhammer 40k. A lot of it's like bastardized Latin. It's referred to as High Gothic, but it's bastardized Latin words. Basically, what happened is he wrote this book about worship. He wrote the Bible, and then he passed it off to the Imperium, like, "Hey, this is a thing." And so now humans worship the Emperor en masse. It's the official state religion. There is the High Ecclesiarch sits on the council, the High Lords of Terra table. He's one of the most powerful men, one of the most powerful humans in all of the Imperium, and he's right there at the table in a pope hat, being like, "Hey, y'all better pray before we start this meeting." It's like, y'all better pray. The Emperor is nice to us and gives us guidance while we're having this meeting. If you all worshipped hard enough today, and it stems from there. Like they're zealots.
Yeah.
A lot of it is zealotry, and it goes into the grim dark nature of it, and the worship of the Emperor. And there's different interpretations from different people who are like, maybe the Emperor is a god, given his existence, maybe he is deserving of worship, or maybe stuff like that. Like, a lot of this stuff is open to interpretation, even given the facts that we have, and that's part of what makes it so much fun. Like, we can view the Emperor as a god, or we can view him as an extremely tragic figure. One thing I'll tell everyone before anything else is that the Emperor, kind of a shit dad.
Yeah, I mean that seems kind of evident, even though like those other ones that he like had at his disposal. What were they called? The Thunder
Thunder Warriors.
Warriors. Yeah, those guys like. Did he? You said he like created them, right?
Yes, he created them. He recruited them and created them. He
Yeah.
came up with he's also a big scientist, because he's experienced all that shit, and his brain is just huge.
Yeah.
He absorbed all that knowledge.
So I mean, yeah, just like the way that he treated them, like it's kind of makes sense that he's not really a very good father figure.
He's very harsh and unforgiving, is how a lot of people view him. And the crazy thing is that even with shit like that going on, and even though we know he's ordered at least 2 other whole legions to be wiped out, people are still very forgiving of him, because they're like, well, it's a hard galaxy. It's a cruel galaxy. One of the best explanations I think I've ever gotten for why the Imperium is better than like the human Federation. Like, I think they were called like the Terran Federation or something, but since they were very Star Trek with how powerful they were, we'll just call them the Federation. Like, the big difference between the Imperium and the Federation isn't their beliefs; it's the fact that the Imperium is what's needed to survive. The Federation crumbled at the first opportunity. The Imperium is so well fortified and so militarized, and like the souls of its people are so protected, that it's what's needed for humans to survive in this galaxy.
Okay.
Like, we're at a point it's the 41st millennium, and we're at a point where it's like you can't remove the state religion anymore. Like, there are characters, like even the Emperor, who would be like, "No, stop worshiping. We're going to change this shit." Where it's like it wouldn't work, because we're under so much threat from external forces and chaos, that it's like if you tried to pull religion out of people's lives, it would destroy the Imperium,
Yeah.
and then humanity would fall right after.
Yeah, they don't got much going for them right now, so
Nope. It's rough. It's very rough. There's little hope for. Well, I shouldn't say that. There is hope, but it's like the silver lining for very dark clouds. We have a couple champions, some good things going our way, and there is of course the phrase always uttered by loyalists of the Imperium, which is "the Emperor protects," because the Emperor, as tortured as he is still sitting on that throne, still enduring all that pain, and is still keeping humanity going. One of the things that we know he's in agony about is the fact that his body is literally powering what is basically a psychic lighthouse called the Astronomicon. This light is used as a navigational marker for ships in the warp and is the reason human ships are able to calculate where Earth is and where other worlds are in relation to Earth and how they navigate to where things are. It's their default with the state of technology. It's the only real way they have of navigating. It's like, okay, where's the lighthouse? The lighthouse is there. Okay, that means we're here. And and it really helps them. It keeps them going. It's the guiding light for humanity, and it's powered by the Emperor. The Emperor is that's how they know. The Emperor protects is very literal. He's protecting all the souls of humanity by being their guiding light.
yeah, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm personally a big fan of like the idea, like again, a lot of this falls back to like themes, like the grim themes, where it's like humanity's kind of fucked, but we're still fighting, we're still carrying on.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what humans have always done, and I mean it's good that this game can kind of like pull that in to it too, and the timeline of this is like so like expansive, even after like all this time has gone by, because you said like there were parts of humanity that were at where we are now, like kind of towards like the beginning of this stuff happening, and then you said it was what, like 5,000 years for that, like well,
The Age of Strife, yeah.
yeah, and it was like where things just kind of really tore down and everything. Like that's, I mean,
Yep.
the if you think about how humans are like in the real world and everything, like we constantly are fighting back, constantly like clawing our way, and we don't give up no matter like all this shit that gets thrown at us and everything, and we're constantly like dragging our feet like through the mud and everything, trying to make our way back to the top. And
Yep.
it's kind of cool that Warhammer's like talking about that, where it's humanity's gone through all this horrible shit, and they there are these trillions of people that are like on billions of planets, trillions and trillions or whatever, like on billions of planets, and they're continuing to fight through.
Yep. They push through and they claw their way back. The one day, like in a long time in the past, we were so much more than what we are now, and the idea is that one day, or like at some point, we like during like just before the heresy started, we were so close to defeating our enemies and reuniting all the worlds of humanity. And once that happened, it's like, okay, Alexander has conquered his territories. Now we build the empire. Now
Yeah.
we're going to build ourselves back to what we were, and then it all came crashing down in the heresy, and it's very tragic. That's one of the overriding themes of like the Horus Heresy. There's a book series that encapsulates a lot of it, and there's more materials and stuff, but even the summaries are very sad because it's like it's just we were so close to having something better, and now we don't, and it's all fucked up, and you can't even be mad at many of these characters. You can just feel sad for them because it's like I see why you did what you did. I just wish you hadn't done it.
Yeah.
I mean, some characters are just outright bad. Like again, Erebus, fuck that guy. But it also comes down to like, we could have been so much more. We almost had our brilliant golden future. Instead, now this is where we're at. Like the shit is dark and grim. we're not 100% sure we'll survive, but the one thing that is sure of is that we're gonna fight like hell to try.
Yeah.
Like we'll do what we have to do. One last bit of lore that I wanna give to you here before we start wrapping things up. One of my favorite bits of lore that encapsulates the defiance of humanity is that at the height of the Horus heresy, when the Emperor was fighting Horus, the Emperor could not bring himself to kill his son. The Emperor was like, I don't want to kill him. I actually care about my son too much. This goes into like what was the Emperor's motivations for stuff. Like he's a cruel, unforgiving bastard sometimes, and other times he's very compassionate. Like, you know, he might have, you know, he's got different shades to his being, as it were. But it is talked about how he couldn't bring himself to kill Horus. He's like, I don't want to kill him. I don't want to kill him. Please don't make me kill you, Horus. And Horus wasn't having it. Horus was like, no, man, I'm high on that chaos shit. I'm loving this. And he's battering around the Emperor, and he cut off one of his arms at one point, and you know, and he's breaking his bones, and he's shattering his armor and everything. And he's like, oh, look at you now, you big fucking pussy. And you know, Horus, he's high on that chaos shit and laughing like an idiot, and he's having a great time. The body of Sanguinius is literally in the room. Another of the Emperor's sons is laying dead in the room, killed by Horus when the Emperor finally got into the room. And so he walked into the room, and Horus is standing over Sanguinius' dead body, and he's like, hey, Dad, what's up? And the Emperor was still like, I still can't bring myself to kill you.
Yeah.
And that body is still there when this is going on. It's like, you have to do this. This guy is too far gone. And like any other person would have done it, but the Emperor was like, nope, I can't do it. And so it looked like the Emperor was going to lose. But just as it looked like Horus was going to throw down the final strike, that he was going to deliver the finishing blow, there was this one guy. His name was Alanius Pius. That is the version of his name anyway. But Alanius Pius stepped forward. He's not a space marine. He's not a custodes. He's a dude.
Just a dude.
He's just a dude. He's the biggest fucking Chad who I think who's ever goddamn walked on a bridge like this. Holy shit. He stepped in front of the Emperor's fallen body. Like the Emperor's on the ground. He's missing an arm. He's all fucked up and whatever. And he looks like he's about to die. He steps in front of these titanic beings, and he just looks Horus dead in the eye. And basically, he's like, to get to him, you're going to have to go through me. I can only imagine that when this happened, or if it was actually written out, that Alanius would have said some badass shit. But like, all that's known is that at the height of the heresy, just before the Emperor was about to die, Alanius Pius planted his feet in front of the Emperor between him and Horus, and then died on his feet. Because Horus saw this regular ass human being just step forward and be like, "Do it, nerd!" Like, and then Horus was like, "Bet," and then just one hit erased him from existence. Like just turned him into pink mist.
Yeah.
Like there was no coming back from that. Like there was no chance. Like as cool as that moment was, it's like, dude, you're a total noob, and this is a level 100 player. It's not gonna happen. It's like, we admire your spirit, kid, but it ain't gonna happen. And so Alanius Pius was slain. And then Horus just laughed at it because he was like, that shit was so easy. It was so funny how that just happened. Like, I can't believe this idiot stood up like that. And then the Emperor saw that Alanius died like that and was like, you killed that man so casually. He was so amazing and brave, and now you're just laughing about the fact that you killed him. He was literally nothing to you, and you still just derive pleasure from killing him like that. I know what I have to do. I just wish I didn't have to do it. And then the Emperor hit Horus with a psychic blow so powerful it killed him.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's one of my favorite bits of lore, just because Alanius is like exactly like he's considered like the patron saint of the Imperial Guard, like the regular human military of the Imperium. And he's also like the Emperor's. There's a medal named after him. Like it's like the highest. Like instead of the Medal of Honor, it's like the Order of Alanius Pius is what you're being awarded. Like it's like you have to do something so balls to the walls crazy that you should have died.
Yeah.
And then, like, we give you an award. Like most of they rarely ever hand them out in the Imperium, and even when they do, most of those guys are dead. Because it's like, you should have died getting this medal. But it's just my favorite bit of lore. Just like the idea of just this regular ass human just planting his feet in front of what's basically Satan and being like, if you're gonna get to him, you have to go through me. And then he immediately died. But the idea is that other humans, it's like, hey, we're not gonna put up with this shit. Like your version of how this galaxy should be is not how we're gonna keep it.
Yeah,
And
and
it's very cool.
that's how a lot of like heroes and our tales here, you know, like in the real world. And I say tales because, you know, like who knows. Um,
Encapsulates everything, you know, like
yeah,
legends, stories, myths,
you know, that's
all of it.
a lot of the time it's the little guy that steps up. You know, I mean, you got David and Goliath from like Christianity.
Yeah,
You know, he
humans love
steps up and
stories.
says nope. You know,
Yeah,
and that happens in so many religions and lore, and you know.
I mean, hell. I mean, we see moments like that all the time, and there's some of the coolest moments in stories where it's like this person stands up and it's just like, you know, you're about to see a brutal murder, and someone just like, you know, is like, hold on, we're not doing this. I'm not gonna let you do this. It's like,
Yeah.
can't let you do that, Starfuck. Sorry, but no, like even Lord of the Rings, for example, Theoden's about to get killed by the Witch King, and Eowyn just comes over and is just like, "I will kill you if you touch him." Just throws herself right in between this eldritch horror and her father, and is like, "You're not getting near him."
Yeah. That's I mean
Such a great moment.
that's hero behavior.
That's some great hero behavior. I love it so much. Like people like to shit on the guard, like both on the tabletop and also in the lore, because they're just a bunch of dudes and all they do is die. And it's like, yeah, that's the thing. They know they're gonna die and they're still gonna go at it. They're some of the biggest badasses. Like, you know, people joke about how it's like, you know, it's easy to be brave when you're a superhuman warrior and you're wearing this, you know, this ancient powerful armor that's gonna, you know, block off lasers and explosions. But, you know, then you got this regular dude who's maybe just wearing his regular, you know, cloth uniform, and he's just holding a laser gun, and he's like, let's do this, fuckers.
Yeah. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap up this first stream
Indeed.
here. Want to thank anybody watching. Again, these videos are going to be going up on our YouTube page for Modular Nerds. Um, Go ahead and head over there, hit subscribe, like the video. It's probably going to be broken up in. I don't know if I'm going to do broken up in 2 episodes or if I'm just going to do one full episode and just kind of edit it down. Um, we'll see. I got to work on some of that stuff. But if you're watching over on YouTube, um, head over to Twitch, Modular Nerds. We are going to be doing all these podcasts on different topics. You know, movies, video games, tabletop, music, whatever we feel like. We're just going to go out there, give our shitty opinions on things, and not really give too many fucks about it. Um, but again, thank you everybody for watching. I'm Mimir, and this is
And
Lennex.
I'm Lennex.
We'll work it
I'm
out.
Lennox.
We'll work it out.
We'll work it out.
Uh,
Uh,
Again, thank you everybody, and have a nice day.